Students, let us start a new chapter, thermodynamics today. So the first topic is zeroth law of thermodynamics. Zeroth law of thermodynamics. So zeroth law is the very basic law, basics of basics, right? So it says that when there are two bodies A and B, right, and they are separately in a thermal equilibrium with a third body C, right? A is in thermal equilibrium with C, right? And B is in thermal equilibrium with C, okay? Then A and B are in thermal equilibrium with each other. So two bodies A and B, if they are separately in thermal equilibrium with some other body C, then they have to be in thermal equilibrium with each other, okay? This was all about zeroth law of thermodynamics, right? Let us now understand the various thermodynamic processes, okay? So types of thermodynamic processes. Types of thermodynamic processes, okay? So we have basically isothermal process, isochoric process, isobaric process, and adiabatic process, right? See, briefly if we discuss these processes, in isothermal process temperature is not going to change, in isochoric volume remains constant, in isobaric pressure remains constant, and in adiabatic process there is no exchange of heat between system and surroundings, right? Let us now discuss all these processes in detail and let us draw their PV, VT and PT graphs, okay? So kindly note down, dear students, let us now discuss the isothermal process in detail. Okay, see, in isothermal process the temperature is constant, and when temperature is constant, volume occupied by a given mass of gas is inversely proportional to the pressure applied. So we have PV being constant, okay, right? Okay, so if we draw the PV graph, we are going to expect a hyperbolic graph, inverse relation, right? And if there is a point where pressure is P1, volume is V1, and we draw a tangent at this point, then the slope of the tangent is, slope of the tangent at this point is minus P1 by V1, right? So slope of the isothermal curve is minus P by V. Slope of isothermal curve is definitely minus P by V. Okay, dear students. So if we draw PV versus P graph, if we draw PV versus P, it is not going to be changed. It is not going to change. We know that PV versus P is going to be a straight line because PV is constant at constant temperature, right? Also, if we draw the pressure versus volume graphs at at different temperatures, right? This is one graph, this is the other one, this is the third one, right? Temperature being T1, T2 and T3, okay? These are called isotherms. So if we take the pressure to be same for all the cases, the case in which volume is maximum, we expect the maximum temperature in that case, right? Since volume is maximum in this case, so T3 is greater than T2 is greater than definitely T1, dear students, right? Okay. Now, see, we have drawn the PV graph for isothermal process, which is going to be a hyperbola, right? See, dear students, we have already discussed this, that PV graph for an isothermal process is hyperbolic, okay? So we know that this is a PV graph, okay? PV graph, and slope of this graph is actually minus P by V. Okay. Now let us draw the PT graph for the isothermal process. PT graph, pressure versus temperature graph. Let us consider that volume is increasing and pressure is decreasing. Pressure is decreasing, volume is increasing. Okay. Now what do you expect the slope of the PT graph? dP by dt. Since dt is 0, slope is going to be infinite. We are going to expect this vertical line. So volume is increasing, pressure is decreasing. So pressure must decrease in this case also. And let us discuss volume versus temperature graph for isothermal process. VT graph, we are going to expect this VT graph as again infinite slope. Since volume is increasing, volume must increase here, right? So if the PV graph is like this, then the corresponding PT graph and VT graph will be like this. Okay, see, kindly note down, dear students. See, dear students, if we have a PV graph for an isothermal process, right? This is an isothermal expansion. Volume is increasing from V1 to V2, and we are asked to calculate the work done while the volume increases from V1 to V2. We are asked to calculate the work done while the volume increases from V1 to V2. See, in that case, obviously the area under the PV graph gives the work done, right? Area under the PV graph gives the work done, right? So this small volume is dV, okay? Now work done is, you know that for the small process it is PdV, right? Now if you put the value of PV is equal to nRT, right? I'm not writing all these steps. P is equal to nRT by V, and then you integrate, right? Then you integrate from initial volume V1 to final volume V2, right? So we are going to get the work done as nRT ln V2 by V1, or you say that we are going to get the work done in isothermal process as 2.303 nRT log of definitely V2 by V1, right? Also we know that P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2 for an isothermal process. So we can get the value of V2 by V1 as P1 by P2. Okay, so work done now becomes 2.303 nRT log of P1 divided by P2, dear students. Okay, right? So this is the case for work done in an isothermal process. This was all about isothermal process, dear students, right? Now let us now discuss the next process, that is, say, isobaric process. Okay. So the next process is going to be isobaric process. Isobaric process, right? Okay. So pressure is constant. So when the pressure is constant, dear students, then volume is directly proportional to temperature. Okay. This is for an isobaric process. Okay. Right. So now let us draw the PV graph. Obviously when pressure is constant, this graph is like this, and when you are asked to calculate the work done, you are just basically going to find this area under the PV graph, right? You are just going to find this area bounded by the PV graph, initial volume being V1, final volume being V2, dear students. Okay. Now what will be the slope of this PV graph? Obviously when dP is 0, slope is going to be 0, right? This is for, isobaric process, right? And work done is given by, pressure into definitely only the change in volume, right? What about the PT graph? PT graph, again, if pressure is constant, dP by dt is going to be 0, right? We are going to expect the straight line pressure parallel to temperature axis. Since the volume was increasing, so temperature must increase. Okay. And what about the VT graph? What about the VT graph? See, we know that PV is equal to nRT, right? And dV by dt is going to give nR by P, P being constant. So it is a straight line passing through origin. It is a straight line passing through origin. Temperature was increasing here, volume was increasing here, both must increase here, right dear students? I hope this is clear to everyone. Okay, this was all about isochoric process dear students. Next we have isochoric process. Third one is isochoric process. Isochoric process, right? Okay, now for isochoric process, volume is being constant, volume has to be constant, right? So PV graph going to be a straight line. Let us consider that pressure is increasing. Obviously dP by dV has to be infinite. No area bounded with the volume axis, work done is 0, right? Now let us draw the VT graph. See, if volume is constant, we are assuming this we are expecting this dV by dt to be 0, right? Graph parallel to temperature axis now, and when the graph is parallel to temperature axis and pressure is increasing, so temperature must increase. Okay, right? Now the next graph will be PT graph for isochoric process. We know that PV is equal to nRT, right? So dP by dt is basically nR by V, since volume is constant. So this is going to be a straight line passing through origin, both increasing, right? I hope this is clear to everyone dear students. The next process is adiabatic process. So the next process is dear students adiabatic process. This is an adiabatic process. Okay, right? Now for an adiabatic process we have PV raised to the power gamma being constant. Okay, the slope of this adiabatic curve is, you know, gamma times minus P by V. Slope of adiabatic curve minus P by V was actually the slope of isothermal curve. So slope of adiabatic curve is equal to gamma times slope of isothermal curve, right dear students? So basically when you have to identify the isothermal and adiabatic curve, and we know that value of gamma is greater than 1, gamma is equal to 5 by 3 for a monoatomic gas, right? And gamma is equal to 7 by 5 for a diatomic gas. Okay, we know this, right? So we know that gamma is greater than 1. Okay, so if we want to draw the PV graph, and suppose this is an isothermal curve, so we expect this adiabatic curve to be a little more steeper. So this is an adiabatic curve, right? It is steeper, adiabatic curve, right? And if this is an isothermal curve, okay, keep in mind. Also the two different gases may have different adiabatic curve. Suppose you have PV graph, right, and you have two different graphs. Suppose this is one of the PV graphs for adiabatic. This is adiabatic, not isothermal, and this is also adiabatic. Suppose both are adiabatic curve. You have to identify which one is, you know, monoatomic and which gas is, you know, diatomic. See, value of gamma is greater for monoatomic gas, 1.66. So the graph for monoatomic gas, the adiabatic curve for monoatomic gas is going to be more steeper, rather steeper, not more steeper, more steep. And graph for diatomic gas is going to be less steep dear students. Okay, since value of gamma for diatomic gas is less. These both are adiabatic curves for monoatomic and diatomic gases respectively. Okay. Now see, for adiabatic curve we have very interesting PV, VT and PT relations. Let us see. Now you know that for adiabatic process PV to the power gamma is constant, right? Now you also know that PV is equal to nRT, right? So pressure is equal to nRT by V, right? This is, you know, nRT by V raised to the power V to the power gamma is equal to constant. So we are going to get TV gamma minus 1 being constant. This is the temperature and volume relation for adiabatic process. This is pressure volume relation for adiabatic process, dear students. And next we have PT relation. Okay, see, we have PV to the power gamma being constant. We also know that PV is equal to RT. We know that RT by P, this is P into RT by P raised to the power gamma being constant. So we get P to the power 1 minus gamma T to the power gamma being constant, right? This is, you know, PT relation for adiabatic process. So PV, VT and definitely PT relations for adiabatic process. Okay, dear students. So dear students, let us now draw the PV, VT and PT graphs for an adiabatic process. See, we'll first draw the PV graph for any PV graph for an adiabatic process, then we'll draw the corresponding PT and VT graph. This is suppose PV graph, right? And let us see that pressure is increasing, volume decreasing. So you'll get the VT graph rather very similar. Okay, this is again the VT graph, but when the pressure is increasing, volume has to decrease. Okay, so these are the corresponding PV and VT graphs, and we expect the PT graph to be like this, right? Since the temperature was increasing, pressure was increasing, so both pressure and temperature should increase in the PT graph, right, dear students? Kindly note down, dear students. Now we are going to calculate the work done in an adiabatic process. So okay, if this is an adiabatic process, right? This is the PV graph for an adiabatic process, and work done is basically the area bounded by the PV graph. Okay, this is volume is V1, volume is V2. So work done is P2 V2 minus P1 V1 divided by 1 minus gamma. This is going to be the work done, right? Or you get nR T2 minus T1 divided by 1 minus gamma. This is going to give the work done in an adiabatic process, dear students, right? So dear students, let us now do a next topic, calculating work done from PV diagram, from P versus V diagram. So the area bounded by the PV diagram is going to give the work done, right? If you have PV graph like this, right? Okay. And you are asked to calculate the area during the work done during the process ABCD. See, let this is 5 atm, let this is 10 atm, right? Let the initial volume be 2 liter and the final volume be 4 liter. See, work done is, you know, area bounded by this graph, which is L into B, so which is 5 atm into 2 liters, right? If the cycle is clockwise, work done is positive. If the cycle is anti-clockwise, then work done is negative, dear students, right? Suppose you have an ellipse here, ellipse, right? Suppose PV graph is an ellipse, right? This is pressure, this is volume, right? Suppose this is 2 liter, this is 6 liters, and suppose this is, you know, 5 atm, and suppose this is 6 atm, right? Okay. See, dear students, if you have an ellipse here and you are asked to calculate the area of ellipse, see how can you calculate the area of ellipse? This is, you know, the radius r1, right? And or you can say that this is half of the major axis, this is semi major axis, this is major axis, this is half of the minor axis, right? R2. Area bounded by an ellipse is, it would have been pi r1 into r1, that is pi r1 square if it would have been a circle. Since it is an ellipse, its area is pi r1 r2. Okay, right. Now the work done is, you know, pi 6 minus 2 is 4, half of 4 is 2, right, a liter, into 6 minus 5 is 1, that is 0.5 atm. So we get the answer as pi atm liter. Positive, because the cycle is clockwise. If it would have been anti-clockwise, then work done would have been negative. Okay, dear students. Right. Now we have to do more questions based on, say, integration. Next question is, you know, pressure is equal to A by V plus B, and you are asked to calculate the work done. Calculate work done when volume increases from V1 to V2. Okay. Now work done will be P dV. P is equal to A by V plus B into dV. Okay. Just integrate, you will going to get the answer. Work done is integral of A by V plus B into dV, right, from V1 to V2. This is A dV by V from V1 to V2 plus B integral dV from V1 to V2. Okay. This is, you know, A ln V from V1 to V2 plus B V from V1 to V2. Okay. See, this is, you know, A ln V2 minus ln V1 is ln V2 by V1 plus B into, definitely, dear students, V2 minus V1. I hope this is clear to everyone now, right? This was simple integration. Okay. Suppose, easy question, suppose you have a pressure as alpha V square, and again you are asked to calculate the work done when volume increases, from definitely V1 to V2, right? So dW will be P dV. This is, you know, alpha V square into dV, right? Let us integrate now. Alpha V square dV integral V1 to V2. 0 to W alpha V cube by 3 from V1 to V2. We are going to get this as alpha V2 cube by 3 minus V1 cube by 3, dear students. This is actually the work done. Okay, dear students? Right. So the next topic is going to be first law of thermodynamics. First law of thermody. Right. So obviously the first law of thermodynamics is based on law of conservation of energy. And what does the first law of thermodynamics say? Suppose there is a closed container, no heat is lost to the surroundings, right? We have a system here, usually an ideal gas, right? And we supply some energy to the ideal gas dQ. That energy can be spent by the system, by the gas, in two ways, right? Suppose we supply some heat, okay? Suppose we are supplying some heat, right? We supply the heat dQ, okay? So heat supply dQ is equal to change in internal energy, right? The heat supplied to the system is actually used by the system for increasing its internal energy. Rest is used for work done, okay? Or you can say that when you supply some energy to the system, it does some work and the rest part is used in increasing the internal energy of the system. Okay, dear students? Right. Now, we have many cases. Likewise, case 1. For an isothermal process, say if you have an isothermal process, for an isothermal process, the change in internal energy is going to be 0. Internal energy is a state function, it depends only on the temperature, or rather internal energy basically depends on the initial and final states. It does not depend on the path through which the state had been attained, and also internal energy depends on temperature. If the temperature remains same, internal energy is not going to change. Okay. In case of when the state does not change, right? If there is a state change, then internal energy changes. Okay. Right. For case 2, suppose you have isochoric process. Suppose you have isochoric process. So change in volume is 0, work done is 0. Then when obviously the system cannot do any work, then the heat given to the system is used to increase the internal energy of the system, right? Next we have, suppose we have cyclic process. So in a cyclic process, once the starting and ending points are same, internal energy change is 0. dq is equal to dw. Okay. Suppose you have an adiabatic process now. So for an adiabatic process, there is no exchange of heat between system and surrounding, dq is 0. So du plus dw is 0, right dear students? Next we have say melting process. For melting process, dq is du plus dw, right? dq is mass into latent heat of fusion, change in internal energy plus pressure into the change in volume. Usually this change in volume is very small when the solid changes to liquid. There is some change in volume, but usually less, right? Lastly we have boiling process. So dq is equal to du plus dw, p v2 minus v1, right? dq is mass into latent heat of vaporization, change in internal energy plus pressure into v2 minus v1 definitely. I hope this is clear to everyone dear students, right? This is how the first law of thermodynamics changes for every different process, right? Kindly note down dear students. Let us do a simple question, right? So heat supplied to the system is 50 joules. When it is supplied to the system, it is this, right? The change in internal energy is plus 20 joules, and you are asked to calculate the work done, whether it is done by the system or on the system. See, dq is equal to du plus dw, right? So this is 50 joules, this is 20 joules plus work done. So work done is 30 joules, right? So work done is, since it is positive, that means it is expansion, and when there is expansion, it is the work is done by the system. Work done by the system. Okay, system has done some work. Okay, right. Also, let us take an example, question 2. Suppose you have basically a PV graph, right? And system goes from state A to say state B via different processes. This is process 1, okay? This is process 2. Okay, system goes from state 1 to state 2, state A to state B via different processes. Okay, right. And obviously you are asked to compare the heat, which is greater, Q1 or Q2. Compare, right? See, the change in internal energy for the process 1 and process 2 is going to be same. Says internal energy depends only on the initial and final position, not on the path followed between initial and final position. So change in internal energy for process 1 is going to be equal to change in internal energy for the process 2. Now work done is the deciding factor. See, the area bounded by the PV graph during the process 1 is greater, right? So area bounded by the PV graph during the process 1 is greater than the area bounded by the PV graph during the process 2. So we expect the heat supplied to be greater in process 1 as compared to process 2, dear students, right? Okay. Kindly note down, dear students. Dear students, let us now discuss what is a polytropic process. Okay. Polytropic process. So any process of the form in which PV raised to the power small r is constant, where small r is any number, right, is called a polytropic process, right. So work done in polytropic process is given by nr delta T divided by 1 minus r, and molar heat capacity for a polytropic process is Cv by capital R by r minus 1. This Cv is r by gamma minus 1 minus r by small r minus 1, right. Okay, suppose let us take an example in which a gas expands according to PV raised to the power 2 is constant, and you are asked to calculate the molar heat capacity. It is Cv minus capital R by small r is 2 by 2 minus 1. So molar heat capacity here is Cv minus R, dear students, right. This is the case of basically a polytropic process. So dear students, let us now discuss what are the limitations of first law of thermodynamics. See, we are doing thermodynamics, right? We are doing thermody, and now we are going to discuss what are the limitations of thermodynamics. Sorry, first law of thermodynamics. Limitations of first law of thermodynamics. So one limitation is that it does not tell the direction of flow of heat. See dear students, if you mix ice and water, you expect that the heat will flow from water to ice, right? That means from a hotter body to colder body. However, if I say that heat will flow from ice to water, then in that case also law of conservation of energy is valid, right? That means total energy remains conserved, but it does not tell us that the heat flows from hotter body to colder body, right? So one limitation is that it does not tell about the direction of flow of heat, right. Now one more limitation is that it does not tell about the amount of heat that can be converted into work. That means there is no heat engine which can convert 100% of heat into mechanical work, okay. It does not tell what amount of heat can be converted to work. Amount of heat can be converted to work, right. Okay dear students, so after this let us end the first law of thermodynamics and let us move on to the next law, that is second law of thermodynamics. See, so next will be, dear students, second law of thermodynamics. Second law of thermody. See, basically two scientists gave the second law of thermody and they explained the second law of thermodynamics in their own way, right. One is the Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay, what is that? That is obvious statement that no heat engine can convert 100% of heat absorbed into mechanical work. That means you cannot make an engine with 100% efficiency, right. So their statement says that no heat engine can convert 100% of heat absorbed into mechanical work, right dear students. 100% of heat absorbed into mechanical work. You cannot make an engine with 100% efficiency. Next will be Clausius statement. Okay, what is that? See, it is impossible for a self-acting machine to transfer heat from a colder body to a hotter body without the help of an external agency. You cannot use the refrigerator without electricity supply, in simple terms, right. So it is impossible for a self-acting machine to transfer to transfer heat from a colder body to hotter body, colder body to a hotter body without the help of an external agent, without external help. Okay, without external help, dear students. Without external help, right? Now let us now discuss in detail the heat engine, refrigerator and Carnot engine. Okay, so our next topic is heat engine. Okay, see, heat engine, and we are interested in calculating the efficiency of an heat engine. So dear students, this is the source of heat which is at a higher temperature, right? We give heat Q1 to the working substance. It performs some work. Okay, working substance is usually an ideal gas. It performs some work by absorbing heat Q1, and you know that it cannot convert 100% of heat into mechanical work, which is actually the second law of thermodynamics, and it basically returns the heat Q2 to the sink, which is at lower temperature T2, or you can say which is actually the surrounding in this case, right? So efficiency is basically work done, work performed divided by the initially heat taken, right? Now dear students, we know that according to first law of thermodynamics, dq is equal to delta u plus delta w, right? Or you can say w, right? Okay, now this working substance will get heated, it will perform work, it will further cool down and return to its initial state, which is mandatory for the working substance. Working substance must return to its initial state after completing one cycle, right? So heat utilized is actually Q1 minus Q2. Okay, change in internal energy is 0 since the process is cyclic, plus W. So we get this as Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1, which is 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Heat is basically directly proportional to temperature, so this becomes 1 minus T2 by T1, right dear students? This is basic thing all about heat engine. Okay, can you note down, dear students? Let us now discuss Carnot engine or Carnot cycle. Okay, right. Carnot cycle. See, Carnot was a scientist. He told that out of the available choice, what I am saying, or what he was saying, that if the working substance goes through the given following steps, then the efficiency of the engine is going to be maximum. It will not be 100%, but it is going to be maximum, right? So this is Carnot cycle, that working substance must go through the following steps. Okay, right. Initially it should go through isothermal expansion, then adiabatic expansion, then again isothermal compression, and lastly is adiabatic compression. Okay, right. AB, B2C, C2D and then D2A, right? So AB is, this is P versus V graph, this is P versus V graph, right? Okay, let this be P1 V1, this point be P2 V2, okay, this be P3 V3 and this be P4 V4, right? Process AB is, isothermal expansion, right? Let us assume that during isothermal process change in internal energy is 0, right? And some heat taken by the system is Q1, heat absorbed by the system be Q1, okay? Now B2C is basically adiabatic expansion. B2C is, adiabatic expansion, right? Adiabatic expansion. So in an adiabatic process, the heat change is 0 basically, right? Let us assume that during the process AB temperature is T1, okay, and during the process B to C temperature changes from T1 to T2, okay, right. Now CD will be, isothermal compression, and Let us assume that during this process the heat is Q2, temperature is T2, we don't expect the change in internal energy, right? And dA will be, you know, adiabatic compression. dA will be adiabatic compression, okay, right. Right, dear students? Okay. See, we can also find the relation between V1, V2, V3 and V4 in this Carnot engine, Carnot cycle. See, how can we do that? See, for an isothermal process, we know that for process AB, P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2. The next one being adiabatic, P2 V2 gamma is equal to P3 V3 gamma, right? After that, P3 V3 equals to again P4 V4, right? And lastly, we have P4 V4 gamma equals to again P1 V1 gamma. Let us multiply all the things. So this becomes P1 V1 P2 V2 gamma into P3 V3 into P4 V4 gamma equals to, this becomes P2 V2 into P3 V3 gamma into P4 V4 into P1 V1 gamma. Okay, now P1 P2 P3 P4, P1 P2 P3 P4, right? So V1 V3 into V2 V4 gamma is equal to again V2 V4 into V1 V3 gamma. Right, dear students? So we get V2 V4 gamma minus 1 equals to V1 V3 gamma minus 1, right? If you take the 1 by gamma minus 1th root, so you get V2 V4 is equal to V1 V3. So V2 by V1 equals to definitely V3 by V4. This is the relation between V1, V2, V3 and V4 for a Carnot cycle, dear students, right? Just write down the formula for efficiency also. Efficiency is, you know, if heat taken during the process is Q1, for this process heat is Q2, efficiency is 1 minus Q2 by Q1, or it is also 1 minus T2 by T1, dear students, right? Kindly note down, dear students, this is all about Carnot cycle, okay? Now, let us understand the concept behind the refrigerator or heat pump, okay? Refrigerator or heat pump. So basically, refrigerator or heat pump extracts heat from a region which is already at a lower temperature and it rejects the heat to a region which is actually at higher temperature, okay? So we have a sink here, right? This is a sink and temperature is T2, obviously it is being lower. The heat absorbed from the sink is Q2. This is the working substance, the gas present inside the refrigerator, okay? This is working substance. Obviously, this is not possible for a self-acting machine. So in this case, we have to do work on the system, right? W, and obviously it rejects the heat Q1 to the source, right? Surroundings, right, dear students? Now understand one thing, that delta Q is actually delta U plus W, right? Right. Now, okay, we don't have efficiency for this refrigerator, rather we have a coefficient of performance, and it is given by, you know, we are interested in the amount of heat extracted from the sink, right? So basically Q2 divided by what electricity we have to supply, that is W. This is called, dear students, coefficient of, okay, performance, right? Now okay, this delta Q is Q2 minus Q1, okay? Change in energy is going to be 0 because working substance obviously has to return its initial state, and since it is worked on the system, so it is negative. So we get W as, you know, Q1 minus Q2, right? So this becomes, coefficient of performance becomes Q2 divided by definitely Q1 minus Q2, heat being proportional to temperature, so we get this as T2 divided by T1 minus T2, dear students. So this is what we say the coefficient of performance of a refrigerator. Greater the value of beta, that means it will extract more heat for less electricity being supplied, right? That will be a good refrigerator. Okay, dear students, kindly note down.